Hello, biologists. Welcome back to Bioscience. This lecture is all about photosynthesis. That's what I'm going to title my notes. Photosynthesis is this week. Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is performed in plants and some bacteria in order to take light energy, light from the sun. So it takes light energy. And then we make that into some kind of usable form within the plant. So we can make it into chemical energy, and that chemical energy can then be used to make things like sugars. So chemical energy or cellular energy, and then resulting in a sugar after, like glucose. Glucose, or one of its cousins, glucose or cellulose or any of those guys. That's photosynthesis, light from the sun. And then you get stuff throughout this process. So let's focus this video on generally what happens in photosynthesis. Generally what happens in photosynthesis is, well, let's decide where photosynthesis happens first. We should do that. So if I were to have a plant, I have a plant in my house. It's my first time having a plant, and I'm doing pretty good about it. So my plant kind of looks like this. I have one of those little orange pots that I bought at Home Depot on sale. So I have an orange pot, and then my plant, it's one of those viney kinds, so it kind of sticks up like this. So it sticks up, and then it has some leaves, and then the longer bits kind of grow over like that. Has some leaves. My daughter is 8 months old. She just tried to take a bite out of the leaf yesterday. So, we just live and learn. Okay, so here's what this looks like. So that's kind of like my little viney plant. And this viney plant I have right next to my window, and the reason that this plant is right next to my window is because I want this photosynthesis to happen really effectively during the day, and I want these leaves to face the sun because that's where photosynthesis happens, mostly is on these leaves. So if we're to zoom in on a leaf, any leaf, that's a leaf. Let's zoom in on that leaf. This is what it would look like zoomed in. So it's kind of like to the side there. This is a prettier version of the leaf that I initially drew. And if you've looked closely at a leaf, it kind of looks like this. It kind of has this thing that goes like this, like that. And those little lines that we just drew, let me point to them. These little lines, those are called veins. Those veins on the plant transport nutrients like waters and sugars and gases and things throughout the plant. So just like we have veins in our body that transports blood and stuff, the veins of the plant kind of do a really similar job. So I'll write that. Veins transport like oxygen, or not oxygen, transport carbon dioxide, CO2. That's what plants like to breathe, is CO2. Not that they breathe, but you get what I'm saying. And nutrients throughout the plant. And so remember that photosynthesis happens in plants and some bacteria. So I'll write that actually at the top of our notes here. In plants and some bacteria. Those bacteria, one example of those bacteria that do photosynthesis are called cyanobacteria. But for the purposes of this lecture, we'll just focus on plants. Let's focus on plants. Okay, so those veins, coming back here now, those veins have, they're just little channels that we can transport stuff through. But if we were to look in really, really closely on that leaf, even like zoom in even more, so let me draw a little zoom in box there. If I were to take like this part here and zoom in, there's little pores on that leaf. So if I were to zoom in on that leaf, let me draw that little cutout that we just did. Let's see, so we kind of have a line through like this. Okay, so it kind of looks like that. That's what we just zoomed in on. If we zoom in even more, I'll take you in. Zooming in, we have these little pores. They kind of look like, almost like lips. Those little pores, and there's another little pore here. Those little pores, and they can open and close, kind of like, think like this, open and close, in response to the needs of the plant. But those little pores are called stomata. Stomata. Those are pores that allow for gas to come in and to leave. So stomata, that's where CO2 enters the plant, and that's where oxygen leaves the plant. Not leaves, it leaves the leaves. Anyways, so carbon dioxide enters and oxygen leaves at the stomata, and the stomata can open and close as needed. And this is really important because we know that plants consume oxygen, or consume carbon dioxide, and they release oxygen. That's where we get the oxygen that we breathe from the atmosphere, is from plants. Photosynthesis doing stuff. That's where we get it. Isn't that so cool? Okay. So from there, we know that everything is composed of cells. We learned that in one of our lectures. So let me actually show you a picture, that same picture that we used in our cells lecture. This is a plant cell. Let me actually paste this onto our next page here. Let's look at a plant cell. Okay, so I'll shrink this ever so slightly. Okay, a plant cell. So a plant cell has everything that an animal cell does, with the addition of some stuff. So of course we have things like nucleus. That's what this guy is, nucleus. So we'll write this, nucleus. We have ribosomes. That's what these little guys are pointing to, ribosomes. Play a role in protein production. The endoplasmic reticulum, the ER, this is the rough endoplasmic reticulum that's being pointed to. We have stuff like the Golgi. Look at, there's a mitochondria there. All of these things. We've seen this picture before. And of course, the cool thing that plants have is this really structured outer part. That really structured outer part is called cell wall. Cell wall. That's this whole green thing here on the outside. That whole green outside is cell wall, providing some structure. Within that cell wall is the whole cell, the plasma membrane, that phospholipid bilayer thing with everything inside. Some other cool stuff that plants have that we don't, and I guess I'll highlight this to color code it. So cell wall, that's new. I'll highlight it better. How about that? Cell wall. Okay. We also have the vacuole. The vacuole, that's really prominent in plants. That helps maintain the water balance of the cell and the structure and things. But the one that we care about for photosynthesis mostly is this guy here at the bottom called chloroplast. I'm going to zoom or scroll up just a little. Okay, chloroplast. Chloroplasts are these little green guys, and they kind of look like mitochondria, and they kind of look like mitochondria because they do a pretty similar job in that they play a role in doing important things for the cell involved in energy. So if we were to zoom in on a chloroplast, and it looks like a little bright green jelly bean, and it does that because there's these little green pigments in it. So let's zoom in on a chloroplast. And if we were to zoom in on a chloroplast, this is what it would look like. So I'll draw it in green because, you know, 'tis the season. I'm wearing green today because of this lecture. So chloroplast. So it looks like a jelly bean. So I'll draw a jelly bean. There's my little jelly bean. And then it has an inner membrane too. So it kind of looks like this on the inside. We're just doing our best. Okay. Kind of like that. Sure, okay. And then within that chloroplast, we have, like, it kind of reminds me of like stacks of coins. These little stacks of coins like this. One, I'm just drawing however many I feel like drawing. These little stacks, and there's some stacks over here too. Okay, Okay, and the whole thing is full of these stacks of coins. So, you know what? We'll just take this one. This one looks nicer. We'll copy it and then we'll paste it here. Oops, not the whole thing. Okay, we'll just go like that. Okay, so each of these discs, each of those discs are called a thylakoid. That's just one disc. Thylakoid, that's one disc. All of these discs, like in this stack, that is called a granum, one granum. A bunch of them would be called grana. Okay, so this is called granum, or the plural, if you have lots of stacks, is called grana. Oops, one N. Grana. That's the stack of discs. Stack of discs. And all those discs are connected, and this becomes really important when we're thinking about like how photosynthesis happens, and thylakoids and grana are one of those places that photosynthesis really does happen. So thylakoids and grana, that's what we have so far. The liquid inside of the chloroplast has a special name. That liquid inside of the chloroplast is called stroma. Stroma. That liquid inside of the chloroplast is called stroma. Stroma is liquid inside. Okay, so then we have the thylakoids, we have the grana, the stacks, you know, and then we have the inner membrane of the chloroplast, and the outer one, outer membrane. That's chloroplast. Let me show you a better picture of what I mean. So going on to the next page, that's our chloroplast. Let me show you from our textbook. So this is kind of what I mean. A chloroplast looks really bumpy when we would look at it on a microscope. That's what this guy is right there, chloroplast. And it's tiny. And within that chloroplast, here's what I mean. There's our thylakoids. Our thylakoids are each of these discs, but notice that they're all kind of connected. It's really this kind of open space inside, and then it's connected to other stacks. And those stacks, again, one stack is called a granum, multiple grana. And then the goo inside, that's the stroma. The stroma is this stuff in here. And of course, then we have inner membrane and outer membrane. And this is what it would look like in a real cell if we've stained for it. And this is appearing green, I should mention. This all appears green because of this really, really important pigment that lives in the thylakoids. Let me show you where that is. So the thylakoids, and within the chloroplasts in general, they have, well, just right here, up here, green, due to pigment. That pigment is called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll. That's important. Chlorophyll, that's a pigment that lives inside of the chloroplast. And we'll talk more about chlorophyll later. Every part of the plant that appears green has chlorophyll. And that's where photosynthesis happens, because we need chloroplasts to do this process. Okay, so moving forward. That's where photosynthesis happens. So there's two general portions of photosynthesis. So we've established, where does photosynthesis happen? Let's now ask a new question. What does photosynthesis look like? Let's do overview. So what does photosynthesis look like as an overview? Well, if we were to have that same chloroplast from before, one, and we'll rotate it like this, And then we have the inner membrane. We're doing our best here. Okay, so there's my chloroplast. So one part of this whole process happens, there's two steps of photosynthesis. One of those steps happens within the thylakoids, within those grana. So there's my stack of grana. That's step one. And step one is called the light reactions. Light reactions, that's step one. And so it's called the light reactions because, well, okay, so in the sky, we have the sun. Here's the sun. Oh, that yellow isn't the best. We'll do more. So here's the sun. And then it has, you know, the rays. And the sun's rays, that's the really important part of this process because those sun's rays then send light energy. And it kind of looks like Harry Potter, how we draw this in textbooks. So that's light energy. That light energy, you know, make it even more dramatic. That light energy is something that we call a photon. Photon, otherwise known as light energy. Energy from light then goes into then step one, which is light reactions. But we also get some other stuff too within the light reactions. We also have the addition of water. We also have water coming in, and there's some results from this process. One of those results that's released through the stomata, through those little pores, one of those results is oxygen, O2. That's what's released into the air that we breathe, but we also get some other stuff. Let's see, I'll draw in green. So let's do produces some stuff. It produces things like ATP, also produces NADPH. These two things are used in step two. That's why I bring them up. We're going to go through this in detail, but generally I want to give you an overview. So that produces some stuff, and that gets you to the second step. The second step is this cycle thing. It goes with the addition of CO2, carbon dioxide. Remember, that's what plants like to use, and so that's what it comes in right here. So CO2, and then we go like through this cycle thing. And we've already covered cellular respiration, so this cycle thing is kind of sort of similar, but it's a totally different process. So this cycle thing, that's step two, that's called the Calvin cycle. And from the Calvin cycle, then we produce things like glucose. So then the outcome of this cycle then, would be glucose and like other sugars and things. So the Calvin cycle, that's step two. And then we can come back to light reactions because then we have more photons, and it kind of goes on and on and on. Generally, that's what happens in photosynthesis. Come join me for part two.